God isn't looking for us to already be perfect. He doesn't need us to justify ourselves. He's already done that for us. It's who he is. He just asks us to come honestly, no matter how broken that may be. He will not reject a broken heart. Good morning. Wasn't that such a special time of worship? Thank you so much, worship band. And it's so good to hear about the bereavement journey as well. It feels somewhat apt that we're going to be going through a lament psalm in this space. Last week, Peter Burton gave a beautiful introduction to the Psalms. And if I had the time, I would pause right now and let anyone who wasn't here catch up or listen on Spotify or YouTube. But out of respect for lunchtime, I'll just have to trust that you'll catch up if you missed out. As I already mentioned, this morning we're going to be looking at a lament psalm. We'll spend a couple of minutes talking about lament psalms generally. After that, we'll look at the context for Psalm 51, and then we'll go through it together. This story I'm about to tell actually isn't mine, but it belongs to one of the youth at my last church. She used to tell the story of how, growing up, she didn't ever really get cross with people. And then one day, her dad had done something that just got to her. It wasn't anything big, but she felt all of this emotion. And she turned to him and opened her mouth to try and tell him how she felt. But because she didn't get cross all that often, she just couldn't think of any words to say how she was actually feeling. And instead, what came out when she turned to him were the words, You farty man! At the height of crossness, those are the words that came to mind. Farty man. Isn't that wonderful? The thing is, though, it demonstrates that we don't naturally, as people, always have the words we need to express our feelings. This is where lament psalms play a key role in helping us to articulate our feelings and bring them before God. Lament is one of those words that has fallen a little bit out of our language, but just because we don't hear the word doesn't mean we don't see and hear examples of it. To lament something is to grieve, to give voice to deep hurt or sorrow. It's often in response to suffering, injustice, or loss. Tremper Longman defines a lament psalm as a prayer uttered when one's life is in turmoil. I've pulled out a few modern-ish examples of laments here to help us picture it, although they are not directed at God as biblical laments would be. Any Les Mis fans in the room? Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Les Miserables is a musical, and when looking for lament, it is a sure thing. Lament is Fantine from Les Mis singing, I dreamed a dream. Suffering, injustice, loss, this song is all three of those things. Another popular example of lament is the so-called breakup song. The kind you picture someone singing really dramatically to, probably in the rain. Taylor Swift came to mind for that category, with song titles such as Death by 1,000 Cuts, My Tears Ricochet, and Exile. As a biblical theologian, when I read that one, I was like, that's our word. Biblical laments, however, are not usually about breakups. And the most important difference is that they are an appeal to the God who can intercede for us. They contain hope as well as articulated pain. Thomas G. Long puts it like this. The fact that the Psalter contains psalms of anger, abandonment, and despair affirms not only that such emotions occur in the life of faith, but that such experiences are repeated, predictable, and expected. We have been this way before. Lament psalms hold such a key purpose in the life of a believer. They help us honestly bring our struggles before God, no matter what they are or whether they're the right answers that we learned in Sunday school. They're raw and honest and have helped give voice to human struggles and emotions throughout thousands of years, and they place God in the midst of them. The psalm we're going to be going through today is Psalm 51. Before we begin to read it, we've been given some really helpful context from the psalmist. It says, "For the choir director, a psalm of David regarding the time Nathan the prophet came to him after David had committed adultery with Bathsheba." This is the context that inspired this psalm. So just to remind ourselves of the story here, David was the second king of Israel. He is frequently referred to in the Bible as a man after God's own heart. He is a successful warrior, and we see God's favor clearly on his life, raising him up from a shepherd to the throne. In fact, in previous Psalms, we see how David is viewed up until this point. In Psalm 18, written from David's perspective after God delivers him from battle, it says this: "The Lord has dealt with me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands, he has rewarded me. I have been blameless before him and have kept myself from sin." Those words paint a picture of a well-deserving hero. And then we get this story of how this mighty king, Israel's hero, steals a woman from a rooftop while her husband is off fighting David's own war. A man who is in fact a friend of his. And then to cover up this mess when the woman gets pregnant, David has her husband killed on the front lines. The story arc for David up until this moment has been this amazing crescendo from nothing to the throne, and it's at the highest point in the story that we get this monumental crash. We're going to read it through now from beginning to end, so feel free to follow along, or you might want to close your eyes to focus on the words themselves and the picture they paint. "Have mercy on me, O God, because of your unfailing love, because of your great compassion. Blot out the stain of my sins, wash me clean from my guilt, purify me from my sin. For I recognize my rebellion. It haunts me day and night. Against you and you alone have I sinned. I have done what is evil in your sight. You will be proved right in what you say, and your judgment against me is just. For I was born a sinner, yes, from the moment my mother conceived me. But you desire honesty from the womb, teaching me wisdom even there. Purify me from my sins, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. Oh, give me back my joy again. You have broken me. Now let me rejoice. Don't keep looking at my sins. Remove the stain of my guilt. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Renew a loyal spirit in me. Do not banish me from your presence, and don't take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation and make me willing to obey you. Then I will teach your ways to rebels, and they will return to you. Forgive me for shedding blood, O God who saves. Then I will joyfully sing of your forgiveness. Unseal my lips, O Lord, that my mouth may praise you. You do not desire a sacrifice, or I would offer one. You do not want a burnt offering. The sacrifice you desire is a broken spirit. You will not reject a broken and repentant heart, O God. Look with favor on Zion and help her. Rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Then you will be pleased with the sacrifices offered in the right spirit, with burnt offerings and whole burnt offerings. Then bulls will again be sacrificed on your altar. When I first read through the book of Psalms, I didn't really get it. I'm naturally a thinker more so than a feeler. And I would read, for instance, Psalm 18, like we read earlier, I have been blameless before him. And then Psalms like this one, which says I was born a sinner, and I didn't really know what to do with the seemingly conflicting messages. It's like I was trying to do maths with the Bible verses and I couldn't make one clear rule out of it. How can a person be born a sinner in one psalm and be blameless in another? When those are the kinds of questions we're asking, we're actually approaching the Psalms with assumptions of how we're meant to read it. Not only can this lead to misunderstanding what the Psalms are saying, but it can also lead to us missing out on the depth of what they have to offer. So as we discuss what's happening in Psalm 51, let's not approach this as a science textbook, but instead understand it as poetry, as a stunning portrayal of human emotion and a deeply relational moment between man and God. Most lament psalms start with an appeal of some kind. It's usually for God to save them from something, often their enemies, their circumstances, false accusations, and other such disasters. Like most lament psalms, the psalmist also starts by appealing to God for help. Have mercy on me, O God. Blot out the stain of my sins. Wash me clean from my guilt. Purify me from my sin. The appeal in this psalm is unique to other lament psalms in that all the writer is asking to be saved from is their own sin. James Luther Mays says, many of the prayers for help say, change my situation so I may praise you. This one says, change me, I am the problem. In the words of a modern lament, it's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me. Another Taylor Swift reference for you there. I won't make any more because I don't want you to think that Taylor Swift is for me what Dallas Willard is for Peter Burton. I'm not that big of a fan. The psalmist says, change me, I am the problem. There is no shifting the blame here, no excuses, just honest remorse brought before God. The Hebrew word here for purify is actually to make clean. The language the psalmist is using is all of the same image. Blot out, wash, make clean. It's important to note that what he's talking about here are feelings. It's the feeling of guilt and shame that clings like dirt. This appeal to be made clean is expanded upon in the next few verses. Against you and you alone have I sinned. Your judgment against me is just. These next few verses of this psalm are often the most misunderstood. At first glance, the psalmist seems to be saying that they haven't wronged anyone other than God. Against you and you alone have I sinned. But reading this, we know that David literally stole a woman and then killed her husband. That definitely sounds like people were wronged there. I think we can all agree on that. James Luther Mays says, verse 4 may seem to confess an act that offends God, but affects no human being. But the notion that a person could sin without injuring others is inconceivable in the Old Testament. Even idolatry, which might be thought to concern only one's relation to the Lord, was understood to damage one's community severely. The claim isn't that no human beings were harmed. The claim is that the only place to bring these feelings of guilt and shame is into the lap of the Father. The psalmist continues saying, for I was born a sinner, yes, from the moment my mother conceived me. Now, before anyone latches onto this verse as a theological proof, it's not actually about original sin. We know that as followers of Christ that we are saints and not sinners. We know that there is nothing that can challenge the identity that Jesus has won for us. Just because we sin does not define us as sinners. Remember, this psalm wasn't written as a theological unpacking of sin and grace. It was written by someone pouring out their heart to God, expressing their guilt and remorse that they feel. These words are the felt experience from man to God, not the response from God to man. That is the first section of this psalm. The appeal continues in the second section, verses 7 to 11. I want to especially pull out verses 7 and 10 here. Purify me from my sins, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Section 1 held all the imagery of feeling stained, of needing to be made clean. Section 2 holds imagery of ultimate cleanliness, whiter than snow. Create in me a clean heart. The word create here is the same Hebrew word that was used all the way back in Genesis 1 when God created the heavens and the earth. It's a word that's only used in relation to God. Only God does this type of creation. I wonder if the psalmist knew when they wrote this of the prophecy in Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 33. But this is the new covenant I will make with the people of Israel after those days, says the Lord. I will put my instructions deep within them, and I will write them on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. What the psalmist asks for here is exactly what Jesus has done for us. The psalmist says, create in me a clean heart. Don't take your spirit from me. Jesus has directly answered both of those appeals for us. We are given the Spirit of God to dwell within us, and by that Spirit, we are made new. The psalmist's heartfelt request and God's plans were perfectly in sync. Notice again that it is a deeply relational moment. The psalmist is reaching out to God, seeking his presence amidst remorse. And God is already perfectly planning things so that he can live with us, not just in our temples, but in our hearts. The third section of this psalm is verses 12 to 15. This is the part of the lament where the psalmist makes a vow to God of how they will respond when God grants their appeal. Each request in this section is followed by a promised response from the psalmist. Then I will teach your ways to the rebels. Then I will joyfully sing of your forgiveness, that my mouth may praise you. The thing that strikes me in these verses is that all of these actions are outwards. The psalmist wants to teach others to sing out loud of God's forgiveness. They're not trying to cover up what's happened. They want to be made completely clean, and the response to that isn't, well, thank goodness, now no one will know what I've done. It's, I want everyone to experience this amazing forgiveness. I want everyone to have the gift that I've been given. You can want your sin to be hidden, or you can want it to be forgiven, but those are opposite wants. One comes from a place of pride and panic, and the other comes from a repentant heart. The psalmist is not concerned with the image of cleanliness. He wants his heart to be made clean. And he is not afraid to share the deep joy that comes from that with others. One Christmas, back when Seth and I were dating, he gave me 2 presents: a beautiful pair of pearl earrings and a tray of salami. As an avid fan of pretty things and cured meats, he absolutely smashed it. I was pleased with both. Unfortunately, earrings are very little, and I do not own the most well-organized jewelry collection. I think you can see where this is going. And a few months after he gave me the earrings, I lost them. I know, terrible. And the worst part was, this was actually the second pair of earrings that he'd given me that I had lost, and we'd only been dating less than a year. I know, not a good track record. And I knew that he wouldn't buy me any more earrings if I'd lost a second pair. And I searched desperately for them, but they were nowhere to be seen. At least, they were nowhere to be seen in my house. But I did see an identical pair in an online jewelry shop. So a few days later, Seth came round to the house I was staying in, and I wore my identical replacement earrings. But as the evening went on, I felt more and more uneasy about what I'd done, until we were watching The Office, and out of the blue, I turned around and I practically shouted at him, "I lost the earrings you gave me and I didn't want to tell you, so I ordered an identical pair, and look, here they are, and I'm so sorry." And I am actually wearing them, and thankfully, he laughed. And then I laughed, and all was forgiven. And the next year, instead of buying me earrings, he bought me a jewelry box that I wouldn't lose them again. Which you can actually see in the picture there, in it. Mistakes being covered up doesn't bring peace and joy, but forgiveness does. It really does. The last section of the psalm comes as does a deep breath. Its words are much needed hope and relief. You do not desire a sacrifice, or I would offer one. You do not want a burnt offering. The sacrifice you desire is a broken spirit. You will not reject a broken and repentant heart, O God. You will not reject a broken and repentant heart. Isn't that such a reassurance? The knowledge that no matter how much brokenness we bring before God, he will not reject us. Because of his unfailing love and his compassion, it's who he is. At the escape rooms where I currently work, I'm responsible for managing a fair few teenagers. Recently, 2 of them were not in work when I was expecting them to be. I had to actually intervene to make sure that teams could still play their escape rooms. The first person, when I asked him what happened, said, "It wasn't my fault. I didn't realize. You didn't tell me." And the second person, when I asked her what happened, said, "I'm so sorry. I can't believe I've done this. I feel terrible." As their manager, which of them do you think it was easier to meet with reassurance, and which of them required further challenge? God isn't looking for us to already be perfect. He doesn't need us to justify ourselves. He's already done that for us. It's who he is. He just asks us to come honestly, no matter how broken that may be. He will not reject a broken heart. And then the psalm concludes with a couple of verses which might be considered a slightly different flavor to the rest of the psalm. The previous verses have just said that God does not desire a burnt sacrifice. And then the psalm concludes, "Look with favor on Zion and help her. Rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Then you'll be pleased with sacrifices offered in the right spirit." Some theologians think that these 2 verses were a later addition to the psalm after Israel and Judah had been exiled to Assyria and Babylon. Even if that is the case, I don't think it makes them any less important for this psalm. So far, the psalm has been a personal journey from guilt and shame to personal renewal. The psalm closes by reminding us that personal renewal is not the ultimate goal. God has renewal plans beyond the individual. This reminds us that the ultimate goal is a renewed people inside a renewed city. In the Old Testament, it was thought that this meant returning to the promised land with a Davidic king upon the throne. For us, we know who that king is, and his name is Jesus. And he is building a kingdom where there will be no more sin and no more suffering, and that is the hope that we cling to. This psalm contains the gospel message from a deeply honest and personal perspective on suffering and sinfulness through to seeing themselves within the bigger picture of God's salvation plan. There are 2 things I'd like you to take away from today. The first is this: lament is important in the life of a believer. The Bible does not teach us that life will be easy. In fact, there are countless examples that life right now is hard. We've already talked about some of those this morning, and you will likely endure suffering and hurt and sorrow. But what it also teaches us is how to honestly articulate that alongside hope. Not to plaster over our real and felt experiences with correct Sunday school answers, but to hold real hope and real pain together and to bring both before God. The second thing I'd like us to take away is simply this: God will not reject a broken and repentant heart. It seems like no matter how often we hear those words, sometimes we can still be hesitant when they apply to us. You don't need to already have fixed problems before you bring them to God. Come in your brokenness. To keep our brokenness from God is to keep ourselves from him, when ourselves is all that he asks us to bring. As the band comes back up, I'd like for us to just close our eyes. Is there anything in your life you want to bring before God? Or anything that you're holding before him and are struggling to hold pain and hope in the same hand? Maybe there's a subconscious thought there that to acknowledge those feelings would be to somehow deny God's goodness. Or it might be like the person in this psalm, that it's messiness in our own lives that we need to bring again. Forgiveness is not just for new believers, it's for all of us over and over again. We won't be able to fix everything in one morning, but we can decide that this is a journey we want to go on, that this is something that we want to bring to God. I'd love to invite you, just where you're sat, to plan in a time with God, to talk about it with him. It might benefit you to find a lament psalm to pray through, to help you articulate to God how you're feeling, and know that whatever that may be, that he will not reject you. Let's stand. For some of us, this might be a moment where we would benefit from having a fellow believer stood alongside us. So as the band begin to play, if you'd like someone to pray with you, either to help you start the journey or just to help you hold your pain and hope simultaneously, there is no judgment here. We'd love for you to come to the front so we can stand with you as your church. Father, thank you that you will not reject a broken and repentant heart.
Thanks so much for joining us for this teaching as part of our Selah Summer in the Psalms series. If you haven't caught all the other talks in the series, they're available here. And if you haven't yet subscribed to this YouTube channel, we'd love you to do so here. Otherwise, head to emmausrd.church for all of the other information about what we are up to, or if you would like to give to the work of this church. Bless you, have a great week.